YOLO amazing people of the tube. So I promised you guys I was going to make a video in regards to the worst thing that happened to America in modern times is actually the collapse of the Soviet Union. And one might ask, why would you say such a thing? That's preposterous, right? But it's not, because we are capitalists in America. And for capitalism to succeed, it needs competition, right? Every single McDonald's has a Burger King, right? Pep Boys has an AutoZone. Ford has Chevy. Countless examples. Now, when the Soviet Union existed, America had to preserve and ensure the American dream was coming to fruition for a large majority of people, right? Because the world was watching two superpowers, right? The United States and the Soviet Union. And the rest of the world was deciding what they wanted, who they wanted to team up with, right? And don't think that the Soviet Union was our enemy, because it really wasn't. We fought 2 world wars together, right? But it was our competition. It was our competition. Now, what is a nation, right? Like, what is a government? What's its job, right? The job of government is 2 things. One, to ensure your safety. To ensure you're not getting killed, you're not getting kidnapped, right? And the second is to create the opportunities for you to create the opportunity of business. And what do I mean by that? They need to create the opportunity so you can create an opportunity. Well, America, it sends its people to internationally, and they make ties with other countries, and they bargain that, you know what, we want all the rubber you guys are producing, right? And all that rubber, right? Like all those, once that's secured, now people in America can then have access to these materials, these raw materials that you would have to otherwise go and try and acquire yourself, right? But the problem is, when you're talking about nations and when you're talking about a resource that's not in abundance, like rubber, right? Then the nation has to step in and make those connections. So once rubber gets here, then Goodyear can purchase a whole bunch and start making tires and all this stuff, right? So once America creates that opportunity or allows that opportunity to flow, then you as an entrepreneur, you can step up and say, I'm going to start producing tires. I'm going to start producing condoms. I'm going to start producing windshield wipers, right? Then you can step up and do your part. Now, the American dream, what is it, man? Or what was it? Because it's changed. It was a simple thing, man. Like, you get an education, you get a decent job, you get the house with the white picket fence, you get the Corvette, right? You have your 2 kids, your hot wife, right? And you live a pretty comfortable life, and then you retire in your golden years and everything should be great. Well, that's how it was until the Soviet Union collapsed. And then America no longer had to try because it became a monopoly in the world. This is the way the Soviets ran their country. So, like, I'm Armenian, right? So I was born in the Soviet Union. So my family, they tell me how it was over there. I'm sure every single republic of the Soviet Union was a little different, right? But for the most part, the way it works is once you turned 18, as a guy, you mandatory have to go to the military for 2 years. You get out, and it was customary to, like, you get out, you find a woman, get married. The government gives you a house. Like, here you go. No property tax, nothing like that. The house is yours. You own it now. Right? And it's not like in communism money didn't exist. People got paid. Of course money existed. People got paid different amounts for different jobs. Right? It's like the same argument when they say, like, there's a pay gap between men and women in the workforce. It's like, yeah, but guys are working way more overtime. They're working longer hours. They're working holidays, right? They're working harder jobs. So based on those things, you got paid a little differently as well. But the difference was, since you got given the house, and based on your job, you were given a car, your job was to work for the rest of your life until retirement. Right? It was like backwards to how we do it. We got to get the education, the job, save the money, get the house. Over there was the house was given, the car was given, but you had to serve in the military and then immediately go to work. And if you didn't go to work, you would go to jail. And then when you got released, you were expected to go back to work. Right? Now, once the Soviet Union collapsed, the quality of life in America dropped. You understand what I'm saying? Because once America became a monopoly, once Burger King disappeared from in front of McDonald's, right? Suddenly America was like, hey, you know what? We can raise interest rates. We can raise housing prices, or the loans for houses and all that, right? Food, goods, and services, everything went up. Oh, you know what? We're not going to continue raising the minimum wage, right? The minimum wage was frozen for the longest time. You guys don't think any of these things had to do with the collapse of the Soviet Union? Or, let me say it this way, if the Soviet Union hadn't collapsed, do you think minimum wage would have frozen for as long as it did? Do you think retirement would have the same problems it has now? Or do you think America would be showboating? Oh, look, we take care of our citizens better in their golden years. When the Soviets are like, hey, we take care of them better in our golden years. Right? There is a competition. And that competition is good for everything. You have to understand, like, even in the military, right? Like, what do you do with your soldiers? You split them into groups and you make them compete against each other, right? If you have a football team, let's say the Rams, right? What do they do when they're not competing against another team? They're being divided in half and being competing against themselves, right? Because the minute you take away the professionalism from anything, right? Like, let's say if we stick to football, if we take away all professional teams except one, well, suddenly that one has to compete with what? Not NFL teams. Now they got to go to these high schools and colleges and compete with them, right? Now the people they're competing with aren't stronger, faster, better, slicker, better moves, better coaches, better, right? So now their abilities start to diminish. So it's the exact same thing with the countries, right? Like, when there isn't this competition of measuring dicks, as one would say. Well, once there's the biggest dick in the room, well then now there's a monopoly, and guess what? No one else wants to measure anymore. And the one with the biggest one doesn't give a shit to do anything with it anymore. Right? And that's the reason why I say the worst thing to happen to America was the collapse of the Soviet Union. Because the quality of life for every single American diminished. The American dream has changed. Imagine the new generation, they could barely fucking rent. Forget buying a house, they can't afford to rent. They can't afford to lease a vehicle. Forget purchasing. They have to go buy used vehicles. You understand what I'm saying? So the American dream has changed. It's not fully clear what it is, you know, other than becoming very successful. But not everyone's an Elon Musk. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody's a Bill Gates. Bill Gates used to be a big name. Now people don't like Bill Gates, right? And I understand exactly why they don't like Bill Gates. But, I mean, not everyone's an Elon Musk, right? There's only a handful of billionaires. There's probably a few thousand millionaires. You get what I'm saying? Everybody else is middle class. So, yeah, when communism collapsed in the Soviet Union, or the Soviet Union collapsed and with it went communism, well, the middle class of America suffered. The lower and middle class of America suffered. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Solo Yolo Bolo.